Welcome back. My name's Nat. If you weren't here last night, I own a company called Rest in Pieces, and we teach the dying arts. So we teach things like taxidermy, skeletal articulation, corrosion casting, and of course, tonight, insect preservation. So this is night 2 of our Dying to Know series. Dying to Know kind of came to be because we mainly taught our workshops in person. And then when COVID came about, we wanted to find a way that we could reach a broader audience. So, whether you couldn't come to a workshop because of, border restrictions or isolation, or if maybe our workshops weren't accessible because of cost or location. So we wanted to launch Dying to Know so that we would create a series of books and kits and do online tutorials so that we could help you guys to access knowledge about the dying arts, which is really important to us. So thank you for coming. And tonight's Dying to Know is part of the Aurum Festival, which is run by Gympie Bone Museum. They are doing fantastic work. They have, got sponsorship money and things like that so that they can start to bring to the forefront, conversations and workshops and tutorials around natural history, the environment, and, cultural heritage. So they have a fantastic summer program lined up. Please check out their website, Gympie Bone Museum, Aurum Festival. But for everyone that was here last night, you would know that this is an interactive session. So please type in your questions if they come up. Even if there were questions from last night, no problems, chuck them in the chat today. Fantastic to have you all back. So we'll kick off. We are filming this for ongoing people to be able to access the tutorial. So I'm going to do a fresh welcome that we can cut the tape from, just in case that seems weird for you guys. So let's do that. Welcome back, guys. I'm Nat from Rest in Pieces, and we're going to go through beetle preservation tonight. Now, we capped on in our last episode that entomology is the study of insects. That is specifically not what we're doing tonight. We're just doing a teeny tiny element of that, which is learning how to pin and preserve insects so that data can be collected from those specimens in a museum or a university environment, so that, people who are doing research can gather information for that research, or because you like to learn this skill and this art form at home. And we're going to teach you both the museum technique and the at-home technique so that you can go away and make beautiful things if that's what you want to do. So fantastic to have you all here again. I'm going to take you through the protocols for pinning tonight. So beetles are quite different to butterflies. We're going to be dealing with different protocols. And if you remember from our previous session in butterflies, the protocols are the ways in which every museum or university around the world will preserve their specimens and pin their specimens out so that the entomology pin is in the exact same place so that all the data can be collected effectively. So if we take a look at our beetle resource, I'll lift this up for you, we're going to be placing our entomology pin tonight, not in the head, the thorax, but in fact in the abdomen. And we're going to be doing that to the right side of the abdomen. Now, the reason for that is because beetles have 2 hard wing coverings that are called the elytra. Underneath the elytra is a soft wing. And if we pin on one side of the elytra, we can still turn the specimen over and gather data from the other side. And so that's why, rather than going through the thorax, where we're damaging the information, the data in the middle of the specimen, it's better to go on one side where you can reverse the data because there's 2 wing sets. So we are going to be pinning our specimen in this manner. And then there's also some information on the placement of legs. So we're going to be referring a lot with our legs. We're going to be doing the forelegs, mid legs, and hind legs. So that's something quite important with the anatomy tonight. I'll jump to the anatomy chart. And if you remember from last night, or if this is your first session, if you get one of our books or ebooks or kits, you're going to have all these resources that are drawn in the book, and they're going to explain the anatomy to you. We like to use basic terms. I didn't come from a scientific background at all. I never even finished year 10. So I haven't finished high school. I haven't been to university. So anatomy is a really foreign thing to me. And I like learning about anatomy, but I also like to learn in a way that makes sense to a layman's person. I would consider myself a layman. And so the way that we have created our teaching through all our workshops, through all our books, is to try to get you to understand the layman's terms and then feed you the anatomical terms so that they make sense. And you'll find this throughout all our workshops, because I certainly would struggle if, you know, people were just talking anatomy to me all the time. I'd be like, I have no idea what you're talking about. So we use a lot of diagrams in our work, and we'll try to use common terms and then overlay with that scientific term so that you can get a really good feel for the art, but also feel like you're broadening your horizon and your vocabulary when it comes to animals, insects, things like that. So if we look at our anatomy chart, there's a couple of things that we're going to be referring to constantly tonight. You might remember the antenna or the antennae from last night. Then we have our wings. So it's really interesting. On a beetle, you might not really think that they fly. Like, we think about them as like crawling insects. But if you remember from our dichotomous key, all insects have wings. And so therefore they fly, or the majority of them do. And so we've got our wings, and in our wing, we're going to have a main vein, exactly like we did with the butterfly. So the area that's thickest on the wing that the air is going to pump through so that the specimen can fly. Then one of the main things that we're going to be focusing on tonight is the femur. So I like to think of that as my thigh. The thigh is the femur, and then you've got your tibia. So I like to think of that as my shin, and the tarsus I kind of think maybe like as my like foot, and then the claw is like my toes. So we've got the femur, the thigh, the tibia is from the knee down to the ankle, so your shin, and then the tarsus is your foot, and you've got your claw, your toes. So we're going to be constantly referring to that because this insect, like all insects, has 6 legs, and unlike the butterfly, we're going to be pinning them in different places. So important things for you to remember. Hopefully we remember from last night the head, the thorax, and the abdomen. So what we're going to do, first of all, is we're going to teach you how to rehydrate your specimen. You might remember that we went through this last night. I'm going to get my scissors. And Cam's coming over to do some tech support. So I think she's plugging everything in. Have you lost me? Just give it a second, guys. I'm only going to give it a second because we're going to use this filming so that people can access these tutorials in their own time. So if you don't mind, Cam's just going to log in. How are we all? How did you find this session last night? I had a few nice emails from people. Did you feel like you learned something, or do you feel like you could do this at home? We've had someone say, good, I'm going to buy the kit. Excellent. I love to hear that. Riley said, absolutely. Jessie, you're super inspired. It's a fun art, huh? I've really enjoyed it. I'll talk to you while Cam's just freaking out doing the tech side of stuff. Did the phone die? What's going on? Phone died. We plan everything to the T and then something dies, doesn't it? Geez, so all you can hear right now is my voice. So we're just going to have to suck eggs while we do that. What I'll show you is this guy's a stag beetle. And last night, if you remember, I showed you that the butterflies come in kind of like a little, it looks like a little Dorito, like a little chip packet that has, you know, the baking paper or the vellum on it. So most often beetles are going to come in a little packet like this. And this guy is a stag beetle. And these guys, I mean, they look pretty average and pretty basic until we do an open wing, and then they look so cool. But one of the reasons that I love these guys is because they spend 6 of their long living years under the earth as pupa and larvae, and larvae, and they live under there and they grow and they grow and they grow for 6 years. And then finally, after 6 years, they'll emerge from the earth. And then they literally only live for a few weeks. They often will live in like rotting logs and things like that. And they will eat and they will breed and then they die. So they spend 6 years underground and then just a few weeks, I'm talking like 2 weeks before they die. Isn't that crazy? So this form that they come in is quite rare. Like you rarely see them out in the wild because they are literally larvae or pupa under the earth's surface. So Cam's just doing some tech stuff. She's trying to be very discreet. But I feel like everyone was here last night, so you're going to be very forgiving of any small tech issue. So just give us a sec. Hey, I'm going to join. Should I join my audio? No. So I'll press related to that. And I think I'm back on. Okay, cool. And am I looking the right direction? I can't see. If I look that way, I can't see. Hopefully we've got it. Maybe someone can nod. Who have we got there? Jessie, can you nod if you can see me? Okay, Jessie's got me. We're back on. So thanks, Kim. Zoom's not great, huh? But wow, welcome to our new reality. So I'm going to clear my throat. I had COVID last week. It was dreadful. I'm so glad that I was vaxxed because we were quite sick and you can still hear it in my voice. All right. So lots of your beetles are going to come in this kind of packaging. So we're just going to trim the sides off very gently with our scissors that come in our kit. These guys also have been doused in mothballs just to ensure that other beetles or bugs don't eat them. And so we're going to get our beetle out. Now, we don't have to, look, and I'll move this over in the center a bit more. Yesterday when we went through butterflies, you have to like plan 24 hours in advance because you have to rehydrate your specimen, or if it's a moth, 48 hours. The cool thing about beetles is that you don't have to do that. So what we're going to do is we're simply going to get just a warm cup of water, and we're just going to pick up our beetle and we're going to push it with our tweezers. So we're going to submerge it down. Thanks, Kenny. You saved the day. There's nothing worse than when you're doing a live tutorial and the tech doesn't work. It's the worst. All right. So all you're going to do at home, you're just going to take your beetle and I just want you to submerge it in warm water for 1 hour. That's all it needs. So less planning is needed for beetles versus butterflies. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab one that I have prepared earlier and I'm going to grab a pinning board so that we can take you through the pinning process. So give me 1 second. Okay, so this guy's been soaking for about an hour, which should mean, and this isn't a stag beetle, this guy's slightly different. So you'll see that his mandibles are not quite like a stag, they're slightly different. They're more like pincers. So you'll start to learn different beetles and what to look for. Very similar to a stag, but not quite. Okay, so that guy's just been soaking for an hour. They will float, so don't worry that, he's soaking to the top. I like to turn them. You don't necessarily have to turn them. They get enough moisture into the legs. And really what we're trying to do with our beetles is we're trying to rearrange the legs and things like that. So I'm going to take my pinning board. Again, you could use foam. You could use balsa wood. Balsa wood's great. You can get these little panels from Bunnings, or if you're overseas, from like a hardware store. So just a thin balsa wood, and you can cut that into segments, and it's really good for pinning. So if you don't have a pinning board, don't stress. Obviously, we sell these things, but we're not trying to flog products to you. I always want to tell you alternatives of what you can use. So with a beetle, I like to keep my pinning board completely closed. So I'm going to adjust my wing nuts. And we've got some questions coming through. So yeah, they only need about an hour. Beetles don't need long. So that's great. Whether that's a mantis or, a grasshopper or, a stag beetle, just an hour, warm water, totally fine. It gets limber enough that you can move the legs, and that's what we want without the legs snapping off. So what I like to do with a beetle, just close the board, because we're not going to be resting the thorax and the abdomen inside it. What we're going to be doing with a beetle is we want to be rearranging the legs in a really cool way so that maybe it looks like it's walking or it's laying down. That's what we're going to be doing with a beetle. And so we need a closed board to do that. So close your board. And then Riley's got another question here. If it was a fresh specimen, would you do the same thing? Yeah, look, even if you found a fresh specimen, unless you're pinning it right there and then, which is super unlikely, because even if you had to drive an hour home, rigor mortis is going to set in. It does with any specimen. So you would want to freeze it and then rehydrate it in this manner. If you just let it dry out, that's fine. Rehydrate it. So always with a beetle, probably just put it in the water for an hour. It's going to be best practice. Okay. So I've adjusted my board and I'm just going to blot my specimen out. Honey, can I please have the linen cloth? Thank you. Now, we spoke last night about viscera. Viscera, if you remember, is just the internal organs, or the guts, if we want to really get into layman's terms. So sometimes when you blot your specimen out, you might get a little bit of discoloration on your paper towel. I mentioned last night you can use paper towel for this, or you might get a little bit of discoloration on your linen cloth. That's normal. So what's happening is there's a teeny tiny bit of viscera, so internal organs, that is sitting inside the abdomen. And sometimes, depending on how hot the water is, or if you forgot to do it specifically after an hour, maybe you left it for 3 hours, that's fine. No stress. Beetles are a little bit different. They're not really going to go moldy. You technically could soak a beetle for a few days and then pin it out. But if you leave it for too long, what will essentially happen is the abdomen will absorb the water and it will start to break down some of the viscera on the inside, which is not very much. I don't do anything to these specimens. And then you might get some leaching onto your rag. So you might get, a little bit of color coming out. That's fine, totally normal. Or your water itself might discolor. This one hasn't, but I've had other specimens where it absolutely has. So don't stress if that happens. So I'm going to flip this guy over. Now, the cool thing about beetles is we can handle them with our fingers. We don't have the issues of scales that we had with a butterfly. So beetles are more robust and quite easy to work with, which is nice. So let's look at our pinning protocol. I'll just jump to that again to refresh your memory. Let's find it. Here we go. So if you remember, we're going to be pinning to the right side of not the head, not the thorax, but the abdomen. Okay, so we're going to place our pin there. And the pin, the entomology pin that I'm going to be using today, remembering that we like to use an entomology pin because they're stainless steel, they won't rust when they're going through the specimen if they do pierce any viscera. So we want to be using an entomology pin. We're going to be using the number 5 today, which, if you remember from last night, just in case anyone wasn't here last night, the number scale works in terms of the thickness of the pin, not the length of the pin, but the thickness. So this is a 3 and this is a 5. And you can tell by the width of the pin. So to get our pin through the elytra, which is the hard wing covering, I'm going to need quite a thick pin. So I like to use a number 5 on a stag beetle. If I start getting into huge beetles, I'll go up to like a 6 or a 7. So let's get our pin, and I'm going to move it to my board. Alrighty. So let's just move our beetle up. I like to place my beetle, and this is not scientific, there's nothing interesting about this, it's just Nat being pedantic. I like to place my beetle in the middle of my pinning board because it helps me focus on my symmetry. So if I see the line of the groove running down the middle of the elytra, so the gap between the 2 wings, I feel like my specimen is in the middle, and therefore it's going to help me to focus on where I want to place the legs, and it makes it more symmetrical. Exactly like you're going to be frustrated with your butterflies if the wings aren't symmetrical. You're going to be annoyed if your beetle's legs aren't symmetrical. So I like to line things up, but you do you however you want to do it. And then following our protocol, we're going to go not into the head, not into the thorax, but we're going to go to the right side of the abdomen. And this is going to take a little bit of pressure. And we want this going at a 90-degree angle. So we want it straight. And I am pushing my pin down. And hopefully you can see that I have done a 90-degree angle there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to place that pin into the board and gently with my fingers push my specimen down so that it's hovering slightly above my board. Can you see how it's not flat on the board, but it's hovering on the board? And the reason for that is if I were to push my specimen all the way down, then when I pin the legs out, the legs are kind of going to be like splat and flat, if you can see my hands, rather than bent and looking like a beetle should look. So I want to pull my specimen up a little bit on my entomology pin, like so. And then that's going to allow me to pin my legs into position so that it feels like a comfortable and natural pose. I'm just going to go off camera for 1 second. My pin is not at a 90-degree angle. So I'm just going to fix that so I'm happy with it. Place it into the board. Oh, and their claws love to grip onto you. That's not symmetrical. That is. I'm going to check that it's hovering. I can go a little bit higher. So now I feel like my beetle is pinned into position. So that's just your initial pin. I'm just going to quickly check any questions. Yes, we had a comment rather than a question about putting insects into resin. You got to be really careful. You absolutely have to get the viscera and the organs out of the specimen, because what will happen with resin is because you're encasing them in a block of something, they can build up pressure. So if you think about your stomachs create gases, and if we seal them into a block, then all that gas can like build up and eventually explode or leak out or leach out. So if you're ever going to do specimens in blocks, thank you, darling. My partner's all over it. Like this tarantula in a block, then you're going to have to take out the abdomen and glue it shut and put some cotton wool or something in it. Otherwise, the viscera will build up gas and it will leach, and it can sometimes make a resin explode. So you got to be careful of that. So we do need to be conscious of making sure preservation is about getting rid of things that can rot and making sure that what we're left with, we have treated in a manner that's going to last, the days really, or the years, or the decades. So the next thing we're going to do, now that we've got our specimen pin, you can see it's just rotating all around the place. So we're going to take a standard dressmaker's pin, just like we did with the butterfly preservation. I've pre-prepared my pinning block, also known as a pin cushion. And I'm just going to place a pin either side of the abdomen, just to stop it from moving like crazy. And I'll just make sure that I'm happy with that placement. And the thing about beetles is it's repeat. We're going to teach you about the anatomy and then we're going to pin. And I think you'll remember from last night that we were like talking to you about cross pins. We're going to do so much cross pinning right now. So I'm going to get my anatomy chart out to just jog your memory of what we're doing. So we've got our anatomy chart here. The things that you're going to keep hearing while we're working on the legs, we've got the femur, the thigh, the tibia, the shin, the tarsus, the ankle, and the claw, the toes. We're going to keep saying this over and over and over again. Femur, tibia, tarsus, and then the claw. So I'm going to continually say that, and we're going to start work with the hind leg, which is this back leg. So what I'm going to do to begin with is I'm going to do a cross pin. So I'm going to take 2 of my dressmaker pins and I'm going to cross them like so. And I want to trap the little joint between my tibia and tarsus. So the joint between my shin and my foot. So it's like basically my ankle. And I can, actually I shouldn't have laid those flat. That was silly. Always have your pins up and ready to go. So I can take my pointed tweezers, pointed forceps, and I'm going to move this leg into a position that looks more natural. So you can see I'm pulling my specimen downwards. And then I want to trap this tibia tarsus or ankle with my cross pins, like so. And then I want to do that on the other side. So I'm going to give myself 2 more pins that are readily available. And I'm going to try and make that symmetrical. And I'm going to do my cross pins over my ankle. Now, some of you last night asked about scorpions, things like that. You could absolutely rehydrate in the same way as you're rehydrating this specimen. And then you could just work through your pinning practice. I just noticed that my pins were wanting to pop. So I just need to change my angle slightly on the way it's coming into the board so that it looks symmetrical, like so. So we've got a question, do we have to remove the gut on a scorpion? Oh, it really depends on the size. Always it's about the size. So if you're getting into a really big specimen, yeah, you need to remove it. But if you're looking at something smallish and if it's fresh, probably remove it. But if you're buying it from a resource online, often they've treated it so that it can get through customs, things like that. Because you've got to imagine, let's say we're buying something online. If it was like a fresh specimen, a great example is actually a stag beetle. So when I was in Indonesia with one of my staff members, we found a beetle that she loved and she wanted to bring it back to Australia. But because it was fresh, it had so much viscera inside it and we didn't have access to alcohol. We didn't have access to scalpels. We couldn't get that out. We couldn't dehydrate it. So we tried to soak it in hot water and that was not effective. And we couldn't get it through customs because essentially it's like a rotting, biodegradable hazard. It's a biohazard to get through customs. And they just took one look at it and they're like, you absolutely cannot bring that in. Whatever's rotting on the inside, we don't know if those bugs are compatible with Australia. So no. But if you're buying from somewhere overseas, which a lot of you will be, or you end up buying from us or other suppliers in Australia, we've already gone through that process where it's been removed. So you only have to rehydrate. So really, it's only if you find something fresh that you have to consider the size, and you're not going to be finding scorpions in Australia. So I think you'll be fine. Okay, so we have pinned the tibia and the tarsus. And then what we want to do next is we want to pin the claw. Now, if your claws are sitting nicely, like this fellow is, You could just use one pin and let the claw just hook around the pin. But this fella is sitting a little bit weird. If you can see that, one's sitting curved nicely in and one's kind of sitting upright. They're sitting quite differently. So for this guy, I might need to twist him to the side, and I might need to do a cross pin, because otherwise he's not going to hold his position, because naturally he's wanting to bend in a different way. So this isn't quite symmetrical, but you know, it's a tutorial, so you figure it out at home. But this one is just clawing onto the one pin, and this fellow needs two to adjust into the position. So I will adjust this guy slightly, not symmetrical at all, but that's looking better. That looks symmetrical. So you can see on one hand I've used one pin and on the other I've used two. That's all we need to do on the hind legs. And now on the mid legs, for a closed wing specimen, it's really easy. We're just going to adjust our legs, make them look symmetrical, and then we're going to pin our tibia tarsus again. So we have another question here about a scorpion for the ento pin. So I always think it's good when you're doing a specimen. So scorpion's different. A scorpion is not an insect, so it won't have, you know, a head, thorax, and abdomen. So I always find it good to Google the specimen and look up the pinning protocol, and it will tell you. For the most part, I would assume that the entomology pin goes through the center. But I've got to be honest with you and say I've never pinned a scorpion. Would love to. It's just with all the work that we're doing, it's not something that I have come across. So always really good to look up the pinning protocols so you know exactly where to put the pin. But in terms of arranging the legs and things like that, or even positioning the tail up, you can build a frame with the pins to push that tail up. So the pinning is just to adjust it into the position that you want. So let's go to the mid legs now. So very quickly, we're going to pin in between the tibia and the tarsus. So it's the mid leg, and it's the ankle of the mid leg, the joint in between the shin and the foot, which is, of course, if you think about your own body, the ankle. So I've pinned that out, and then repeat on the other side. While I'm pinning this out, are you guys mainly here for yourselves? Are you here because you have kids and you want to teach them, or they've dragged you along? What brings you all here tonight? I'm always very interested. 90% of our students are women. I'd say 70% are over the age of 40, which you wouldn't expect. Even with taxidermy, that's the thing. 30% are vegan or vegetarian. Bet you didn't guess that. I always wonder why you're here. So I'm going to pin the claws. Abby said she's wanted to give it a go for a while. How old are you, Abby? I want to see if you're part of my normal demographic. So I told you guys last night that I had rest in pieces for, I don't know, 7 years now. I actually was in corporate world. I was in insurance and finance, riveting, and I wanted a creative outlet, and I couldn't sing or dance or act or paint, or just not good at that stuff. Actually, that's not true. I'm a fantastic dancer, but I have really bad knees. But the rest of everything I'm just shit at. And I really wanted a creative outlet, because, being in corporate world, it just didn't really speak to me. And so I moved down to Melbourne with my corporate job, and I started to find a few bits and pieces. I remember one of the first things I bought was at the Camberwell market, and it was my bull skull. So I tend to name things. So I've got Gerald, my bull skull, or, Nigel, my flying lizard. I've got all these things. I've got a shoulder mount up there of a wildebeest. A shoulder mount is when you just have the breast of something mounted. And I have a giant wildebeest up there called Sir Trot No More because he's got no legs. And I started to bring these things home, and I thought that they were fascinating. I love art and animals and natural history, and it just seemed like a cool combo for me. And I brought them home, and I just moved to Melbourne and didn't really know anyone, and people just thought it was so strange, and I was shocked that they thought it was strange. And so I started to wonder whether you could learn taxidermy or like the preservation of animals. And I found out that you hadn't been able to learn since the 1970s. It got taken off the syllabus because really people are unemployable. And that really fascinated me. And that got me really interested in preservation of animals. And so I ended up stalking a mentor, and I worked every weekend for 3 years for free to learn my trade. And then when I turned 30, I went to Spain on long service leave with my corporate job, no less. And I ended up building a museum with an amazing Spanish guy named Ramon Garros. And I was on the history of hunting, and I was in a little village called Los Ebones. And so for me, I think my fascination came because you couldn't do it in this country. And so I always wonder when people come to our workshops, what brought them here. So we've had a few cool responses. We've had always wanted to learn it for a while, followed RIP, always wanted to learn. I find it wonderful. It's a wonderful art, and I might want it as a career. Yep, I can relate to that. I'm an office manager and accountant, also looking for a creative outlet. I know, right? When you do dry work, like if you've got a curious mind, the dry work doesn't suit you. So you just want something that is fascinating to you. And it can be quite isolating. Most of the people that come to our workshops come alone because their friends think that they're batshit crazy. But truth be told, once you get here, you're around a bunch of like-minded folks. But I really didn't know what to expect when I started teaching, that's for sure. I'm only 19 and work at a pet shop with a bunch of beautiful animals. Yeah, so you're exposed to animals all the time. And also when they pass, it's such a shame if, we just bury them or what have you. I love the idea of preserving them. I love that idea. Okay, so I have done the hind legs and the mid legs, and now we're going to deal with the forelegs. So the forelegs aren't going to sit backwards on a beetle. If you look at our resource, they sit forward. They sit completely differently, not to be confused with the antenna or the antennae. So we need to make sure that we're moving the antenna or the antennae out of the way. And we need to move the forelegs up. Now, the leg placement, it seems really basic when you're doing a closed wing specimen, but next we're going to do an open wing specimen, and you're going to need to change the placement of your legs to allow for the wings to come out. So it is important that you think about where you're going to be placing your legs. So with my beetle, I am going to find my antennae. See these guys? And I'll bring this up. How about I bring it up closer? This is the antenna. Yeah? Yeah? We don't want that in the way when we're pinning our legs out. So you can move these guys up. They're not legs, they're the antenna. So we're going to move them up. And then we're going to try and create symmetry with our forelegs. Again, we're going to do our cross pins. And I'm just going to adjust the leg down. So my specimen is sitting quite high up on the board because I want this guy to look like he's really crawling. So if we look at the side, he's really like on his limbs. They're not flat pressed against the board. He kind of looks active and he looks natural. And I really like that with a beetle. So it's up to you what you want to do. Like I said, you can jump on a forum and hundreds of people will jump down your throat and tell you what you should be doing and shouldn't doing. If you preserve a specimen correctly and you love the way it looks, it's correct. So don't stress. But I am really loving on this specimen the look of it crawling. So I've trapped the tibia tarsus again. So in this case, it would probably be the wrist. So it's between, what do you call this? What do you call this part? Forearm? Yeah. We don't have another name for it, do we? Yeah. You don't call that your foreleg, you call it your shin. So just your forearm. So we're just basically looking at your wrist before you get to your hand, and then the claw would be your fingers. Okay, cool. So then I'm going to pin into position my claw. This one doesn't look symmetrical at all. Gonna fix that up. If you're a really pedantic person, you're gonna love beetle pinning because you just make them look stunning and perfect and symmetrical. And I can see in my camera that these two are not at all symmetrical, and it's going to drive me nuts, but I'm going to pretend like it's not driving me nuts for the purpose of this tutorial. All right, so the next thing that we're going to talk about is the mandible. So we know that we've got antennae because we moved them out of the way for our legs. We've got this giant thing called the mandible, the mouth. So we have a mandible. It's our jaw. We have an upper and a lower. So this is not a stag beetle. I don't actually know what specimen this is. I need to check the website. I'm still learning. We get thousands of specimens in, so I'm still learning. And it's not a rhinoceros beetle. I'm not quite sure. I think it might be a sidekick to the stag beetle. But stag beetles, so this guy, they're really cool. And the reason that they got their name is because their mandible, their mouth, or their jaw, rather, because they don't eat through it, their jaw, it got the name stag beetle because it's like a stag, which is a male deer. And if you look at the mouth parts, so the mandible, they look like a deer's antler, and they actually fight like a male deer as well. So a male deer, when it's threatened, it will smash its antlers against another male deer, and they'll fight and they'll throw each other around. And what stag beetles do is they'll use their mandible and their stag part, the antlers, and they will fight with another male, and they try to throw each other off the log or what have you so that they get to win the mate. Because you got, like we said before, they only live for like 6 days or what have you. They spent 6 years under the ground, and then they're only alive for 6 days. So they just fight, eat, and fuck. That's essentially what they do. And And so that's cool. That's why they're called stag beetles, because they're like the male stag deer. So I always think that stuff like that's cool. And like I said, you're going to go down kind of all crazy rabbit holes when you're learning about insects. So I'm going to move my, oh, these guys don't want to move at all. Okay, they're set. I'm just going to pin them into position. They are different to the stag beetle. They're not chomping around at all. Like I said, this is not a stag. I'm not sure what this guy is. This is what happens when your assistant finishes a long day of work with you and you tell her to go get the stags, and she's like, I got something that looks like a stag but it's not quite a stag, and I'm like, that'll do. What is it? Oh, thank you, babe, that's so helpful. It's a Herothyricus buquetti. That's definitely not how you pronounce it. All the scientific names are on our website. You can buy this guy there. How I said it is definitely not how it's pronounced. I am no scientist, I assure you. Okay. I want my mandibles to sit a little bit lower. So I'm going to add an extra pin just to hold it down. And you remember from the butterfly preservation last night, if a specimen's been stubborn, you just tell it who's boss. You get it into the position that you want. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I want to move my antennae up. Now, you might remember from our butterfly preservation that these guys are really good. The antennae on a beetle, it's not at all as fragile as a butterfly, but I'm talking about a stag-sized beetle right now. Once we get to tiny ones, it might be very fragile. So I really like the paintbrush. If you remember, I always use the paintbrush for antennae. So I just like to move my antennae up, and I just like one pin usually to put it up into position. So I'm going to do that again. And you can see with beetles, it's quite repeat, but it's very much like butterflies last night. If you don't know what you're doing, it feels unachievable. But this stuff at home, it's so simple. And really, anyone can pin. It's just how beautiful do you want to make your creation? Really, just let your mind go. So I have pinned this specimen out now. It's looking okay. I can see some symmetry issues. But all in all, considering I'm working backwards and from far away, I'm not too unimpressed with this specimen. So that's number one done. So what we'll do, we're not going to take any breaks tonight because beetles are much faster. We're going to move on to an open wing beetle, if that will suit you guys. So what I'll do is I'll grab another pinning board and we will close that. And I actually, yes, we've got one on the go. So we'll use the, thank you. We'll use the stag beetle that I've been rehydrating since we started. So we started 1 hour ago. So this is perfect. If we're going to test my method of rehydration, if I can't pin this guy, I've done something wrong and I've lied to you, because I told you after 1 hour of soaking, this guy should be good to go. So let's test my theory. How about that? Cam's just eyeing off the symmetry. How did I go? What's my score out of 10? 6. Wow. Wow. That's rough. Not happy with that score. Okay. So I've closed my board again. And then you'll remember Just going to grab my stag out and let it dry off. If you want to take these waters, darling, thank you. Thank you so much. And I don't need these. All right, any questions so far, guys? It could even be about tales of taxidermy. That would be okay. If we're going to spend the night together, we may as well get to know each other. Just going to dry this guy off. Beetles, the reason that they have a hard wing covering is because it protects their inner wing, their outer covering, the elytra, and the rest of the body. They're waterproof, so they essentially repel the water off of them. So when you take them out of the water, you're just going to get beads of water on top of them that you can pat off. There's really no other reason for the hard wing covering other than to protect them. So Abby's just asked, do I have a favorite animal to preserve? I love birds. I'm a bird taxidermist by trade, but I have a huge passion for native Australian animals, which includes marsupials and all kinds of weird and wonderful monitorings and things like that. So my passion is to preserve animals that maybe children and adults don't get to see in Australia because we have so many introduced species, and the majority of our marsupials are nocturnal, almost all of them, in fact. And so we don't see them. They're basically cloaked by night. They're invisible, and therefore they're not really on our mind. And they're dying every day. And my favorite things to work on are those specimens, because I like to try to create a narrative and a dialogue and educate children and adults alike on why it's important to preserve them and keep your cats inside so that they're not killing native animals, and not to have introduced species in this country, and why we work on things like foxes and pigs and feral cats, and why we happily work on them, because they have to be culled so that they're not killing native animals. So one of my projects this year, and the reason that I've been hosting the Aurum Festival for the Gympie Bone Museum, is because I'm hoping to start a non-for-profit, privately run museum in Melbourne this year, to focus on native wildlife preservation. And I've roped Deb from the Gympie Bone Museum into being on the board, because I don't know how to start a museum. So that's one of my favorite things to work on, and that's one of the things that I'm most passionate about. So that's how you ended up with me tonight, essentially. Yeah, we have lots of amazing animals here, and I'm really excited for the museum because we're going to be doing VR things, and really, we're not going to have specimens that are just kind of sitting there still. We're going to have really dynamic 3D specimens that are doing something, and we want you to put augmented reality over them so that you can see how they would live in the wild. So that's the project that's really close to my heart right now. Okay. So what we're going to do now is we're going to work on this stag beetle, but we want to do it open wing. So we need to change the position of our entomology pin. Now, this is not at all museum standard. You would not find this in a museum or a university collection whatsoever. Because, as we discussed, you always will find the pin on the right side of the abdomen running through the hard wing covering, the elytra. But if I do that, I'm not going to be able to fold that wing out and then let the soft wing underneath come out. So this is not what a museum would do, but it looks really awesome, and it's going to look so cool for your displays at home. So we're going to give it a go. I am going to move the pin, the entomology pin, from the abdomen on the right side to this little triangle. It's not the thorax. It's not quite the abdomen. It's just this tiny little triangle. Let's see if I can get even closer. Tiny little triangle on my beetle in here. That's not going to prevent me from opening the wings out to the side. So if I take my, I've got to find out the name. You know what? I actually don't even know the name of that. I don't even know if it has a name, to be honest. But you can kind of see it. There's this little triangle just here. It's a little bit tricky because it's black. But you know what? When you're at home with your own specimen, you would totally see it. Like, it's really obvious. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my size 5 entomology pin again, and I'm going to pin it straight through that little triangle. And it is tough. Again, we want the pin to be on a 90-degree angle. You don't want your pin to be on a different angle, because then it's not going to pin right in your board or your shadow box or your dome. So we got the, I watched this on makeup tutorials. Oh yeah, there we go. It works. So we got the pin running at a 90-degree angle, and I've got it in this little triangle in the middle of my specimen. Scutellum. Oh my God, I do know that. Did you just look that up? I love you. I do know that. And I did know the name. I actually just haven't taught for so long. I forget things. Thank you, babe. It's called the scutellum. Isn't it cool when you have a partner that's interested in what you're interested in? I think I told you guys last night, though, the only thing that my partner's interested in is insects. I don't know if any of you are coupled up, but I'd love to see in the chat if your partner thinks this is weird or if they think it's cool. While you do that, I'm going to press my beetle into the middle of my board. You know what? I'm going to do something different. I just had a bit of a brain thought. I'm going to turn my board this way, because that will give me more room for my wings to come out. So I'm just going to change it up slightly. Remembering that you don't have to use your pinning board for this. You could use your balsa wood, you could use foam. So for me, rather than maybe my wings extending further out than I would like, it makes sense to me that I might try something a little bit different and go this way on the board. So let's do that. Why not? So I've got my, you won't be able to see it. My specimen is hovering above the board, just like it was before. Tap my camera now, we're rocking. I've got some people here. Riley has a partner, so he thinks it's weird and cool. That's common too. That's a common thing. All right, so we have to walk away from our normal protocols for an open wing beetle. The reason for that is because this elytra, hard wing covering, is going to fold out to the side. It's going to sit up here somewhere. Yeah. And then underneath that, we're going to have a soft wing come out to the side like this. So that means that our hind leg needs to be pulled much lower, much straighter to the back, and our mid leg is not going to be able to be bent in the middle like this because we need a wing coming out. So our mid leg is going to have to sit much higher up here. Oh, I keep looking at you guys down here, and Cam just said to look at you up here. Sorry, I forget because I feel like I'm talking to no one. But when I look down here, I feel like I'm talking to you guys. So we're going to change our our leg placement. So the hind leg is going to come much straighter and lower, and the mid leg is going to come much higher to allow space for our wings to come out. Okay, so let's do that. I'm going to get my tweezers and I'm going to set up some pins for myself to make life easy. Thank you, doll. Okay. So I'm going to pull my, actually, do you guys remember what I forgot? Can anyone remember from the first specimen that I did? I have forgotten something. It's a little bit of a quiz. Hey, Abby said side pins. Exactly right. Did you notice that when I went to pull my leg, can you see that the body is just swiveling from side to side? That's not going to work. So I forgot. And this happens. You know, I've written the book, I've created the kit, I teach classes, I teach tutorials. I still forget stuff. I do all kinds of animal preservation. I still forget. And this is the thing, like, it's cool to go to tutorials and realize we're just humans and we're always going to forget things and make mistakes and be learning. Okay, so I'm just going to pin the lower part of my abdomen into position so that when I'm pulling my legs now, it can't swerve from side to side. So thank you guys. That was perfect. So you can see now it can move a little bit, but not a lot. So what I'm going to do is now cross pin my tibia tarsus, just like we did before. No, I'm not. I made a mistake. I forgot something. I'm going to rewind. You can't do this just yet. You're going to have problems. You can put your entomology pin in, but then you got to open the elytra. I totally forgot. Okay, so we have to open this hard wing covering before we start doing any pinning. I totally forgot. So I'm going to move the legs out of the way. Now, this is not easy. So what happens is, I don't even really know how it happens. So beetles are so cool. It's not that they just close the hard wings over their soft wings. They somehow have a mechanism that locks them together, that clips them together. So it's almost surprising that there would be soft wings under here. And so you actually have to use your nails, which I don't have any. I'm an anxious person and I'm a nail biter, which is not cool when you're running seminars. But you have to try and lift from the back of your specimen the elytra up. Now, when you're doing it and when you're attempting it, it's going to feel like you're breaking the specimen. In fact, you're going to hear a snap. Did you just hear a snap? Can you hear that? Can you hear that on the mic, babe? And then once I've snapped it, I then have to snap it some more because I've got to lift this hard wing completely up. Did you hear all that snapping? It sounds like you're breaking it, but you're not. This is still completely attached. I'll try and do a different angle. That's a better angle. Still completely attached. I've just had to snap it away from the body. And I completely forgot this. Let's call it COVID brain, huh? So then I need to lift the other side. And this hard elytra is now going to split into, and then underneath, I'm going to use my entomology forceps. These are the actual wings that we're going to be dealing with. And they're super folded up. And that's really cool. I'm going to show you in a second. They're really folded up, but they're going to come out and they're going to be huge. So that's actually what's under the beetle. So I'm so sorry that I made that mistake. But, you know, these things happen when you're filming live. So now I'm going to do my tibia tarsus. So I'm going to pull these legs right back. Oh, no, I'm not. I'm going to do my securing of the body. Now I'm going to do my tibia tarsus. Doesn't matter how much you do things, when you're out of practice, you're out of practice. That's why sometimes it's helpful to remember why you do it. Not that you just have to do it, but why you do it. I find that that helps me to remember. Okay, so I've done my hind legs. Now I'm going to do my claw. You're going to make this super symmetrical at home. So I'm just spinning that claw. I'm going to do a cross pin on it. To put it into position. Yep, that looks good. I'm going to do it on the other side. Honey, can you please put some more pins in my pin cushion? Thank you. All right. So I'm going to pin this claw down. I've got a question here from Miley. Do you ever snap it off accidentally? Are you talking about the elytra, like the hard wing covering? I snap things all the time. You know, you would think that me and my team are experts. We literally do animal preservation 5 days a week, if not 7 days a week. Literally, we are workaholics. We love what we do. And we break things all the time. You just need to know how to repair them. That is what is important. And you always need to be really good at problem solving when it comes to animal preservation. I always try and teach my team that. Riley's also asked for different types of beetles. Would the anatomy be the same? The anatomy is always the same. Doesn't matter if you're, thank you, darling. Doesn't matter if you're working on the teeniest, tiniest beetle. The anatomy of an insect is the same. You have the head, the thorax, the abdomen. You have hard wing covering, soft wing covering. You've got 6 legs, 2 antennae. That's what an insect is. And that's why we're doing insect preservation, not arachnid preservation or any other type of preservation. We're not doing taxidermy. Taxidermy is the arrangement of skin. So yes, it's always the same. You just got to, it might be a really small version of the anatomy or it might be a massive version of the anatomy, but the anatomy is all the same. So yes, it is always the same. And that's why these techniques can apply to everything. It's just the size scale is different, but the anatomy is not different. Okay, so what we're going to do now is I'm not going to use my pointed tweezers because that is going to damage these really soft, beautiful wings. But you've got to imagine, I'm going to use my entomology forceps. Entomology means the study of insects. These guys are soft. You can get them for stamp collecting. They're also called uh, spoonbill tweezers. So these wings are going to fold out. Oops, sorry guys, I'll just fix that. To the side. They're going to come right out, which means that I need this leg to come up really quite high. But what we've done for you guys, and can you pass me those little cards there behind you, babe? That's perfect. Thank you. Is we've cut up the foam core that we used last night for our backing board. So we cut these to size for you guys. They'll come in your kit. We call these wing boards. And so what we do is we will place them next to our specimen, like so. And depending on how high you have the specimen off of the board, I'll use up to 2. And I'll just move things around. And this is where your technique from last night's going to come into play, because you learnt some stuff with the butterfly preservation that's going to be very, very effective for your beetle preservation. So I'm just adjusting all of this back into position. Okay, so I've got my wing board here. I'm going to move this over so you can see. Nope, I'm pushing stuff off. I just want you to be able to see that. Now, I'm going to pin my wing boards down into position, like so. Hurts my fingers sometimes to push them through the board, so I'll just use the back of my tweezers to apply pressure. So I've got those wing boards there, and then that means that I know that this leg can't go anywhere that the wing is going to go, because these wings are going to come out to the side. So I'm going to pin this mid leg, and it's twisting right now, that's fine. I'm going to pin this mid leg up here. And this is why it's important to plan your piece and your pose. So I'm going to do a cross pin over the tibia tarsus, the joint between your shin and your ankle. I'm going to do some pinning on my claw. Like so. And then I'm going to repeat the same thing on the other side. So I'm going to move all of this up. Run my 2 wing boards under. Have you guys ever run a Zoom tutorial like this? So weird. It feels like I'm talking to no one. It feels so weird. I'm used to teaching in person where I can see you guys and interact. I'm just talking, but I don't know if it's at all interesting to you guys. All right. What's your job, Riley? Riley said it's her entire job is to do Zoom tutorials. So let's find out what your job is. While we wait for that, I've got my wing boards, and that means this leg has to come up. You can see as I start moving the leg, the symmetry starts coming back with my specimen. I didn't have a great love for beetles, guys, at all. But doing open wing beetles, they look so incredibly cool. I love them way more than butterflies. which is a bit cool because I think butterflies are really amazing. I told you some really cool stories last night about butterflies, but aesthetically, I love open wing beetles in a dome. They look so amazing. And I think maybe people initially think, oh, I don't know if I'm not into beetles. They're not as pretty. They are amazing. You wait till we bring these wings out. It's going to look amazing. Um, oh, you run programs and workshops for libraries, interviewing people. Well, we might have to buddy up, love. We might have to do something together, huh? Education is our thing. Okay, so excellent. We will talk after. Um, so I have now pinned the mid legs. So I've done the tibia tarsus and I've also pinned the claw. And so now I'm going to do my forelegs, remembering to get out the way my antennae. This one's giving me grief. Can you see how my specimen's a little bit dry? And the antennae is just popping back. Can you see that? It's just spring. It's like a spring. I don't like that. I can't work on my foreleg if this antennae just keeps popping back. So sometimes I'll just put a pin to just get it out of the way. So if I look at that on the other side, I'll try and do that up close for you. If I grab I've grabbed the cord, that's not going to work. My antennae is hiding behind here. If I let this go, actually that one stayed. I thought it was going to spring back, but it didn't. Of course, classic. Animals do whatever they want. I'm just going to pin it out of the way. Let's hypothetically say it kept springing, which it didn't. Classic. Animals never do what you want. Okay. So what I'm going to do now, same thing, repeat. Just going to adjust these forelegs into a position that I like. And then I'm going to do my cross pins. And do my claw. And then what we're going to do next, we'll do the wings, and they look so cool. The other claw's sticking much further out, like so. Honey buns, can I please have more pins? You are an angel. Thank you. So look, it's not perfectly symmetrical, guys. Please, when you're at home, make it symmetrical. It will look so weird if it's in a shadow box and the claws are like, well, actually, no. If you're going to be like really cool and do something amazing and dynamic, it would look cool if it was climbing. But if it's not intentional and everything else is symmetrical, it's going to look weird. So if you just want a beautiful display, make it symmetrical. When you get creative, by all means, go nuts. But don't get lazy. Don't be like, oh, I've had enough of that claw. It's not doing what it wants, because it will annoy you. And you don't want to be spending money on specimens and then not being happy with the final outcome. So what we're going to do now, we're going to leave the antennae and the mandible as is for now, and let's focus on the wing. So the elytra is out of the way. The elytra is this hard wing covering. We don't pin them. We don't do anything. We kind of just move them around with our hands to try and get them into a good position. If we want, we could try and rest them behind pins. You know what? Why don't we do that? Just for the sake of the exercise. I've never done it before, but why the hell not? So we'll get these sitting symmetrical. There we go. And now we need to deal with the wings. Now the wings are interesting. So rather than looking at my hand cam, if you look at me, the wings, the beetle will fly with its wings out, but then what it does is it folds its wings up and then down, and then the hard wing covering closes over the top. So if our wings are out and then they fold in and then down, it's all going to be kind of twisted underneath. And so they're a little bit fiddly to try and pull out. So right now, what I'm going to be tugging on is the wing that's folded. So I'm going to be grabbing, think of it as your elbow. So I'm grabbing the elbow and I'm pulling it out to the side. And because there's no scales on the wing, I can put my finger on it. But then what I want to do is then grab the underneath and pull it out. So what I've done is I've grabbed my elbow and then I've used my tweezers to pull the rest of the wing out. Now, that's important for you to know about the anatomy. Otherwise, you're going to damage the wing and not know the way that they bend. So they are out straight when they're flying. They bend in towards your body. So you're touching the elbow and then they come down. So just something for you to think of when you're pulling them out. Now look how beautiful that wing is. This is going to look so cool. And this is just a standard stag beetle, just a ugly brown beetle. You can get jewel beetles, all sorts of crazy beetles. We've got so many on the website. They're so cool. Ones with huge forelegs and huge wings and back legs and huge antennae. Some that glisten, some that shine. They just look incredible, I think. All different colors. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to get, you remember this from last night, this is our vellum. This is our entomology tape. So we are going to now place this over our wing like so. And I love working with beetles. There's no scales. You're not going to rub anything off. So you can push your fingers all over that wing and then you can pin this tape all around it like so to make that wing nice and flat. And then I'm just going to use my scissors and cut off the excess. And then I'm going to do the same on the other side. So we're going to take the elbow joint, we're going to grab it and bend it out to the side. So we'll find the elbow joint, pull that out to the side. I like to put a little finger on it and then I'll try and get under it because the wing's folded underneath it. So we want to get underneath it and then grab that wing. There we go. And you do have to, I'm still being very gentle, but you don't have to be as spooked as you would be with the butterflies. There we go. Hello, little fella. So that wing's out now. Doesn't that look cool? They look amazing. I never really thought about beetles having wings. I just think that they look so cool. I love our beetle displays. So again, just pressing that wing flat. And the reason that I've got the wing boards is because if I didn't have the wing boards, then I'd be trying to pin that wing somehow down onto my pinning board down here. But if we look, we've had to elevate quite a lot to get that wing flat. So that's why we use the wing boards. And it also gives us a good scope of where to put our mid legs and stuff like that. So I'm going to pin that into position. So Jessie said, I noticed the wings can handle touching. Absolutely. So who remembers why we can't touch the wings of a butterfly? Yep, they have scales. And scales are what gives the butterfly wing color. What the wings are made out of for a beetle is completely different. They don't have scales, so they're going to remain this brown color. Doesn't matter how much I rub that color is going to remain. That is the wing, and that's the substance it's made out of. Whereas butterfly wings are completely transparent, they're translucent. And the only thing that gives a butterfly the color is the scales. So if we rub that, it comes off and we damage it. But you can rub beetle wings to your blue in the face. So you can manhandle them a little bit more. And I really like that because we can get a really good outcome. So now that we've got our wings out, we're going to now work on our antenna. So I'm just taking the pins out that I had for the holding position, moving my antennae into a position that I like. I only ever put one pin behind the antennae. Oh, sorry. Cam's there telling me to move the board forward. Sometimes I get lost in my work. I forget. So I've just put one pin behind the antennae, and then I'm just going to move the mandibles so that they look symmetrical. One thing you can do, which we didn't do on the last specimen, if you want your specimen to sit a bit more upright. So what I mean by that is, can you see here that my mandibles are sitting flat on the board? I might like to have them come up from the board and to make my whole specimen look a bit more parallel. So I might like it to lift. So what I could do for that is I could do cross pins under my mandible. And if we look at that now, you're going to see that my mandible is lifted off of the board. And that is going to give me a really nice flow. So you're using your pins to prop up and push down what you want with your specimen. So I'll do that on the other side. Because once this guy dries, it's going to dry in the exact position that you've told it to dry in. So that looks really good. I'm just looking at this on camera. If I was at home, probably what I would do is I'd undo these pins a little. And this wing doesn't look like it's fully expanded. Can you see how this wing looks a little bit shorter? I would just pick that wing up and make sure that I'm pulling it by the main vein completely out so that it's expanded. Because you can pin and unpin and make sure that your specimen is perfect. So I feel like that now it feels more expanded. It felt a little bit like it was creeping up before. And then the other thing that you've got here is your palps. So if I bring this board up, you've got these teeny tiny little palps. These are its mouth parts. They have sensory services. And these little guys in here can suck and taste. So if you want to adjust your palps, you can move them with your tweezers. And you could just pin them into position as well. So see how the pins are just holding those palps now into position? Honey, you can pin anything. You just use cross pins exactly like this. You can preserve anything. Okay, this is very off topic, but if you want a little insight into what I was doing today, I'm going to Tasmania tomorrow, and I've trained my team in lots and lots of stuff, and they do all the animal preservation, pet preservation. But lately we've been getting a lot of human work. So I have been preserving placentas, and today, not recently, I have been preserving a uterus for someone who has transitioned from female to male. And so I have been preserving the uterus that got taken out of them through that transition because they would like to own it. So you can literally preserve anything if you know what you're doing. And that's just a little insight into our day. So yes, once you learn techniques, you can start to apply them to other things. Okay, so this specimen's complete. So what I'm going to do, and I'm hoping it is incredible. The trans community don't have a very big voice, and particularly to preserve a body part, I think is very special. So I'm hoping that this particular client will let me share the photos, but we're just waiting to see. I sent them photos today, and I really hope that they will let us share their journey. So we'll see. If it happens, check out our social media, because we get to do lots of special work. But anything that is biological, we try to teach you how to preserve. That's kind of what we do at Rest in Pieces. So what we're going to do now, thank you, babe, here's some specimens we prepared earlier. So these guys were done many, many weeks ago. For a beetle, if you're doing it at home, give yourself 48 hours for it to dry. You got to remember the outer shell is a bit harder and the whole specimen's a bit more robust. So you want about 48 hours for it to dry. Again, if you just undid a little bit, if you saw the legs springing back and forth or the wings springing back and forth, it's not ready. So you could just repin it and wait a little bit longer. But if you wait 24, 48 hours, fantastic. So what we're going to do, I've got a stag beetle here, one that looks actually it doesn't. That leg looks like shit. I shouldn't say shit, but that leg doesn't look good. The rest looks good. But here's another one. This is a jewel beetle. It's got these cool green shiny wings. I love these guys. So maybe we'll unpin this and then I'll teach you how to display it. Super similar. Identical to the process of last night, just to put into a shadow box. But if you weren't here for last night, I'm going to show you anyway. So what we're going to do is I like to use the grip tip forceps, which, if you remember, have the teeth. And we're just going to take away all the pins. Now I can see, I don't know if you can see this. This little guy has one complete leg and he's lost a little bit of his leg here. So if you remember from last night, we would do our repair with super glue. So we would just add that on now. These things happen. Insects are super brittle and super fragile. So you can glue them together if you break them. Don't stress. You can even mix and match parts sometimes. Sometimes we'll have to use the antennae from a different specimen because this, the antennae from this specimen didn't last. It's totally fine. Don't be frightened to try things and to create. Part of creative practice is not just doing what I tell you to do, but it's been like, okay, well, I think that I can figure this out and, make it better or change it or fix it or, by using other parts. So I reckon just always fake it till you make it. Why not? While I'm unpinning, if you have any questions about insect preservation, even taxidermy, what we do here at RIP, if you're curious about anything, you may as well jump in now. I'm just going to show you this. I have taken out my wing boards, and this wing is totally elevated above my board because it's been dried and it's rested. So it's completely in position, which is cool. So if you have any questions while I unpin, go for it. And maybe Cam, you can let me know if any come through. Yep. How long can you keep a bird in the freezer before examining, and how would you defrost? Okay, so this is a taxidermy question, no doubt. There's a World Championships of Taxidermy, and one of actually not the last competition, the one before that I went to, so maybe 6 years ago, there was a collective group of artists that won a world title, and they had a leopard in the freezer for over 20 years, and then the taxidermy workshop burnt down, but the freezer survived with the leopard inside, and then they won a world title. So if you know how to bag your specimens correctly and put them in a freezer, you can work on them indefinitely. So the only reason that sometimes specimens get damaged in the freezer is because oxygen gets in them. So you can get something called freezer burn. So if you say put a bird in a Ziploc bag and you put it into the freezer and there was air in the bag, the oxygen will create freezer burn. And so little crystals get on the feathers and the skin, and it dries the skin out and it becomes really rough and it becomes really hard to work on. And if it's a mammal, it can dry the skin out and it can look really weird, and it's really hard to work on and really hard to come back from. So the main thing about freezing specimens is simply that you need to make sure that you bag them correctly, get the air out of them, bag it again, label it, put it in the freezer, and then have like a register of your labels so that you're not opening the freezer and getting air into it. Another thing that mentors around the world have taught me, and I think this one actually came from an Australian mentor, Tom Sloan. He told me that with small birds, you can put the bird into a takeaway container, fill with water, submerge it, freeze it. So the bird is in a block of ice. And if the bird is in a block of ice, it means no oxygen can get into it. And therefore, you could literally defrost that thing just by putting it in the fridge. I like to slow defrost, so just in the fridge so the temperature decreases slowly. And you could work on that in 20 years' time. So I've got specimens in my freezer that I've had here for 10 years that I will work on. As long as you freeze them correctly, you can work on them anytime. Okay, 4 more questions. So I'm going to pull these pins out. Are there any places you would suggest purchasing specimens from? Riley, if you can say whether you mean insect specimens or what you mean, because it's really different. So I'm going to come back to that question if you can put more info. Yeah, we sell lunar moths on occasion, so keep an eye out on our website. We've really tried to source some special specimens. With COVID, it's been really difficult. We did a massive order in September, and it's now late January, and we don't have the specimens from September. A lot of countries aren't shipping to Australia right now, so I have a lot of contacts around the world, fortunately, that are trying to help us out. So we're kind of moving them from country to country, but we can absolutely bring in specimens for you that you want. Lunar moths are amazing. For those guys that don't know, they're massive, they're green. And if you remember the swallowtail from the butterflies last night, they have these huge, like swallows that come down. They're really beautiful. So yeah, we can absolutely try and source things like that for you. Whether rules around preserving the plant's uterus. Yes, Riley. So it's a really good question. Unless you are a hospital or a mortuary, it's not legal for you to dispose of human tissue. So we're neither. I am not a hospital and I am not a mortuary. So we are not registered for, and we do not have a license to dispose of human tissue. There are all kinds of rules around it. You can't post on social media. You can't show that you're doing preservation. You cannot dispose of tissue, which is funny because we eat meat all the time, but that's the rule. But with the uterus, we got the hospital to sign off that they were willing to release the tissue to the client who owned it. And we are not disposing of any of that tissue. We are simply preserving that tissue and giving it back to the client. So it's not legal. For example, we've worked on a gentleman who got his toe cut off because he had diabetes. Often with diabetes, if it's quite bad, you'll start to get amputations, because essentially it looks like your body has frostbite. Things will go black and they need to be cut off. They die. Parts of your limbs start to die. And with him, because it's not legal for us to dispose of the tissue, we then had to cut that off and feed it to the beetles and just preserve the bones for him. So there are ways that we need to navigate the legalities of that, but there are certainly a lot of legalities when it comes to human tissue. Placenta is slightly different. More hospitals are willing to give over a placenta and allow it to be preserved, and we've been doing a lot of those lately, which has been really cool. I was working on a placenta today. Just having a look. Do you allow work experience, or do you know anyone who does? So the way that I started my taxidermy journey, and this is a fantastic question, is I found out that you hadn't been able to learn taxidermy in Australia since the 1970s. And so I ended up stalking a mentor, and I worked for free every weekend for 3 years. And I think I mentioned that before. For me, that wasn't the best experience of my life. I got taught a very minimal amount of knowledge, and I kind of understand why. And so I'm going to play the role of devil's advocate and say, if you're an older person who couldn't learn taxidermy in Australia, you went overseas and you trained and you came back and that was your livelihood. There's only 5 full-time taxidermists in Australia. I happen to be one of them. I can imagine that these people who work mainly on big game, so deer hunting and things like that, they've got a very small client pool, and they don't want to be teaching people because it cuts into their bread and butter. That being said, there is far more to preserve in this planet than big game. I don't do any big game whatsoever. I do a lot of exotic birds, pets, marsupials, mammals, things for nature reserves, galleries. We've really found our own niche. But more importantly than that, I think that it's important to not allow a skill set like this to die out, and sharing knowledge is so important. And rather than taking the stance of we don't want to share the things that we've actively gone to learn. We've kind of gone the opposite route and actively tried to teach people what we know. And we're always learning ourselves. So there are no formal apprenticeships or anything like that, but I can tell you that we have 7 staff in Melbourne, 2 staff in Adelaide, a staff member in Tasmania, 5 staff in Sydney, and all of those people started as our students, became volunteers. We had a volunteer here today, one of our students, Maddie, and then they've gone on to become staff. So while there's no traditional pathway at RIP, and we're probably the only company that I know of in Australia that has this pathway, we're trying to create that. So I hope that that answers your question. And then who's the furry cutie behind you on the log? Ah, so this guy is a pine marten. I actually made him in Canada many, many years ago. And I've just recently found this log in Bright. I just bought a place in Bright. I'll never be able to afford to buy in Melbourne, but I bought a place in the country. And I found this beautiful, beautiful log in Bright. And I've mounted this pine marten on it. And then we've got some like moss and stuff coming out. So we're going to be teaching you habitat and taxidermy and stuff like that. But he's a really special specimen and he's for sale now. But you wouldn't find a pine marten in Australia, certainly not. It's a more like a North American and also I think European species. I would have to check that, but I think that's 2 varietals. Is there an animal that you are yet to preserve that's on your bucket list? No. For me, no. There's not really a specific animal for me that I would like to preserve, but there are ideas of art that I'd like to create or pieces that I'd like to create that I often haven't had the time to do running a small business, particularly in COVID and trying to keep the staff employed, which has been really difficult, if I can be perfectly honest. So fun fact, I handed over my admin to 2 of my managers yesterday, which is so great because it means that for this year, I can really focus on making some of the like special pieces that I have in my mind. And so I'm really excited for that. One of the things that I love about animal preservation and one of the things that I encourage you guys is, like learn the basic techniques, but then let your mind wander about the things that you'd like to create and just create them. Like, don't be frightened if it doesn't look right or if you think you're going to look silly or it's going to be dumb. Just create. The thing that I miss the most is just taking my ideas and seeing my idea in front of me. That's what I really want to do. So that's where I'm at the moment. If you are displaying insects in a dome or a log or a stick, do you do anything specific to clean the wood? This is a really great question, Riley. Yes. So often if you find wood, this is a great question. Thank you for asking that. And it's very mindful. A lot of people wouldn't think of this. If you're finding a log in nature, the reason that you wouldn't be able to send that log overseas is because there's probably biological matter in it. There might be small mites, insects, termites, beetles, bugs, fungi, you name it, in the log. And so you don't want to be putting your specimens on a log where there might be things inside it that eat it. So I always wash my logs. I give them a really good wash under the sink, and then I always will freeze them. So I'll freeze them for like a week or 2 to kill any bugs and things like that before I mount anything on them, because I don't then want to put a dome or a case on it and just have any mites and stuff eating away. So that was a fantastic question and a really well thought out one. Okay, do you guys have any questions? If not, I'm just going to move on to simply showing you how to put it into the shadow box. Do you have the same bag? No, Jessie, honestly, I just take a log and I shove it in the freezer. If you want to put it in a Ziploc bag, go for it, but I don't. That's not to say that my approach is right, by the way. I'm just being honest with you. No, the main thing for me is just get it into a freezer. Often also sticks and logs, they're not going to fit a Ziploc bag. You could probably put it in a garbage bag, but I don't really see the purpose. Once it's in the freezer, it's not going to eat anything in the freezer. So no, I don't do that. And we don't need to protect a log from oxygen. It doesn't matter. Your logs are not going to get freezer burn, so it's not a problem. Send through any other questions, guys, and I'll keep answering them. What I'm going to do in the meantime is I'm going to, yes, I'd love that. Thank you, babe. And at the end, I'm going to introduce you to my Cami because she has been doing filming for now 6 nights in a row. We've had COVID. She's working for free. She's amazing. So I'll show you who's behind the scenes. Who's writing to you and letting you in. It's always nice to have a partner that's supportive, huh? Thanks, babe. Okay, so you'll remember this from last night, our shadow box. Well, if it's your first time, welcome. I will just quickly repeat because it can be confusing for some people. Sometimes I think things are obvious and they're not. So when you get a shadow box, often I'll just rearrange the order. Give me 1 second because ours have glass in them. And I don't want to damage that. So when you're undoing your shadow box, more often than not, there'll be an insert frame on the inside. You need to take this out. There'll be glass that sits above it, like so. And then there'll be a backing board. So you take the backing board off. And look, this seems basic, guys, but have you ever received a product and been like, it's broken or it's wrong or it's not right? I have done that 1,000 times with shadow boxes. So you take the glass off, you pull the insert out. This is pretty standard practice with a shadow box. So we take that out and then we reverse the order. So we go glass first or perspex. Often the products that you'll be buying in Australia, if it's not through us, it'll be perspex. We really like glass, so it cleans up beautifully, doesn't scratch. We sell these 8x8 frames that we have custom made, but you guys might need bigger. Try IKEA. Also, some $2 stores that we've seen, I can't remember the brand, but they sell some shadow boxes. They're a little bit shallow, but they still work. So we put the little frame on the inside, and then we've got this guy, foam core. We went over this last night. It's a foam board. We get them custom made. You can buy this stuff from Spotlight, cut it to size, and this is what's then going to go on your box. So we're going to be mounting our specimen onto our foam core. You can spray paint this, you can decorate it, whatever you want, not a problem. So Cami, I'll get you to take this, my love. Thank you. And then I'm going to just quickly use my ruler and my pencil. And I know from last night that my board is 19 centimeters, but I'll show you that. So 19 centimeters. So I'm going to go 9 plus 9 is 18. So 9.5 would be halfway. So I'm going to come down and do 9.5 and then come across on the inside, do 9.5 because I'm going to be quite basic and just put my beetle smack bang in the middle, which is probably not what I would do if I was selling items, but that's what we're going to do for the demo. Then I'm going to put my pin straight into that hole, push it down, and then I'm going to take my cutters cut this fella off. Now, this is a size 5 pin, not a 3. So it's going to take some muscles to get this guy off. I'm going to bring it back to me because I can't do it like this. I'm sorry. I am many things, but muscly is not one of them, I assure you. So, you know what? For the purpose of the demonstration, can you get me those big cutters? You will be able to do this at home. I'm a total weakling. I'm a total weakling. I just buy all the right tools so I don't have to have really good wrist grip. Thank you, baby. So you will cut the back of your, oh my God, I love that tool. Isn't that amazing? You will cut the back of yours with your pliers. And then I'm just going to super glue, which we went through last night. You can use a pin or you can just put the super glue on like so. And we're going to put that into position. I'm going to flip this guy around in a second and show you how to mount him. So if you guys have any last questions at all, whether it's about insect preservation, resin pieces, what I do, something you'd like to learn, please put it into the chat. So we would put this guy into position. And then I'm going to shove it in my, not shove it, delicately place it into my shadow box. Do you ever reinforce the beetle like you would a butterfly? Beetles are more robust, but absolutely. I'll show you in a second. Sometimes we do beetles that are like this big. And they need reinforcing, like they might lose a leg or whatever. And this guy also, he's missing a little leg. So we could do a repair on him with the super glue, and then we could reinforce that joint. Beetles tend to be more robust, even the little ones. But absolutely, if you need to fix something, use super glue. If you need to reinforce something, use PVA. As long as you remember that, you're all over it. And then we're just going to put this guy in. Hopefully he's not going to spin because I haven't allowed any time for my specimen to dry. Oh, so I need to go in. Let's have a look what's going on there. And then here. Okay. And then we end up with a beetle. That's okay, babe. Beetle in a frame. So you guys get the point. We can do all kinds of stuff. Actually, I've got a specimen. Oh, these guys are little. Let's just show these. If you turn the lights off, darling. So this is a little display, and these aren't the smallest bugs that we work on. I'm working in reverse. So these guys, this is my finger. So these guys are about the size of a finger. We work on ones that are smaller than the size of my fingernail. So these are tiny, and you can see, you can imagine my team when I'm going the wrong way. I'm so bad at this. You know what? I would never be good. Can you imagine me doing makeup tutorials? I'd be so bad. So you can see that these are really little. But one's open wing, one's little. And this is a really simple display. I'm going to put it under here as well. Oh my gosh, that's so much better. I'm way less disorientated. So these are tiny. This is the size of a little finger. We've got beetles here. There's one honey with 3, and there's a teeny tiny one that's on the base. Like it's a dome, and it's a dome, and it's got a teeny tiny red one, like the size of a fingernail. So the anatomy is exactly the same. We've got the head, we've got the thorax, the red on this one, and then we've got the abdomen. So exactly what I showed you tonight is exactly what you do on a specimen like this. But look how cool this looks. It's just one closed wing beetle, one open wing, and it just looks amazing. And then this sits inside a dome, which we've taken off, but it just looks so cool. So the anatomy is exactly the same. Here's another one where you can see we've got an open wing, a closed wing, and then we've got this teeny tiny beetle that's smaller than my fingernail. And sometimes, and you wouldn't want to work for me, I asked the team to do open wing on these guys, and they hate me. They hate me. They're like, really? And I'm like, yeah, can you please do open wings? So we even work on tinier beetles than that. But remember, even with this guy, it's the same. Insects have the same anatomy: head, thorax, abdomen, 6 legs, wings, 2 antennae. This is exactly what this guy's got. So even though he's so tiny, you'll be able to see that when you're pinning. So just please always remember that this is an insect pinning workshop. Any insect you can do. You have all the skills now. Are there any other questions? Oh, are those 2 beetles mounted on copper? No. So they are just they're just stainless steel sticks that we have found. But sometimes we'll get copper, sometimes we'll get all kinds of things and just mount them on it. Sometimes we'll paint dowel. So you can do whatever your heart desires, really. Are there any other questions at all, guys? If not, it's so awesome to be in these COVID times and be able to reach you all and teach you, and for also you to learn a little bit about what we do. We started with the face-to-face workshops, but it's been really cool to be able to reach a broader audience in your home and also deliver kits and books and specimens so that you can do it in the comfort of your home or teach your families or teach your kids. I know for some people that's really important. One thing I was saying the other day, and I might be being a little bit sentimental or going a little bit off track, but we got interviewed potentially to do a documentary the other day, so we'll see how that goes. But 90% of our students are women. 30%, like I said, would be vegan or vegetarian. Some people have come from like veterinary science backgrounds or, are nurses or, work in kind of industries like that, maybe an education background. But the majority of people are just people that are curious. I mean, hell, the number of women that we've had that just had a divorce or the kids have left home and they're like, I'm doing something for me. I love it. I love that the thing that they want to do for them is this. And often when you say that you're interested in this, you feel isolated or your friends think you're weird. But, this sort of stuff is not necessarily like, I have a fascination with death. It's more about preservation in life. It's about art and a love for animals and a love for science all coming together. And so this idea that it's kind of macabre doesn't really exist in my reality. So I absolutely love having you guys on board and taking a leap of faith and, trying something new or, learning a new skill or just dabbling in this. And I really hope that, if you can get to Melbourne or Sydney, that you come and do a workshop with us. And if not, that you know, enjoy our books or ebooks or kits or tutorials. We're going to keep bringing them out for you. And we'd love it if you joined our Dying to Know Facebook group, so that if you want to ask questions, there's no dumb questions and there's no right or wrong. You can go onto forums and people will be like, that's not how you do it. That, you know what? As long as it turns out beautiful and it's preserved, it is the correct way. And that is the honest truth. One of my favorite mentors in the world, he has been doing this stuff for over 60 years. And he's like, just never stop learning. He goes and buys makeup from, he's a Trump voting Republican in the middle of nowhere in Texas. And he goes and buys makeup to paint rooster legs with. And he knows every kind of eyeshadow under the sun. And he won a world championships with that eyeshadow. So just never stop trying and never stop learning. I think that that's really important. And outside of that demographic of kind of, you know, women over the age of 40 coming to our workshops, something that I've seen lately is that because we've been around for 8 years, we're having a lot of people that maybe have children that, or even themselves, struggle from anxiety or might be on the spectrum, so the autism spectrum, or have ADHD or something like that, and maybe feel a little bit socially uncomfortable. And I just want you guys to know that it's so commonplace now. We had an open studio recently, and I think that every single kid that parents brought in had autism. They were on the spectrum. And I just think it's really cool for people to find what they're fascinated in, and for them not to ever feel that they come into our workspace and that they wouldn't be accepted or they have something to be anxious about, because you're all coming alone. None of your friends understand, and you'll find your community and like-minded people here. So I just want you to know that, because we even had a student today that came and did a rat taxidermy workshop. We were doing a one-on-one because she was too anxious to come to a group workshop, and she was fantastic and she was so good at taxidermy. But sometimes we let our anxieties get the better of us. So I just want you guys to know that this is a safe space for you and also your children or your families or what have you. And come alone. Everyone does. It's so rare that people come with a friend. Rarely you have friends cool enough that want to do this with you. How do you join the group on Facebook? I will email you the link to this session. I will also email you the group to, I'll also email you the link to the Facebook group. So it's a Dying to Know group, and we'll just cut and paste and write to you and interact with you and try and do helpful sessions. If you have any questions, you can ask us. If there's stuff that we've spoken about tonight, we'll take that from our documents, paste that in there. If there's things from other sessions, we'll paste it. You can ask other students stuff. You can paste your creations, get ideas, share. But you're not going to be persecuted. There's no silly questions, basically. And everything is like, right, let's just give it a go together, I reckon. Okay, I think that that's it.